Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, The Place Beyond the Pines. A mysterious and mythical motorcycle racer played by Ryan Gosling, who has come to town, and it's been a year since he's been there last, and he meets Eva Mendes and finds out that he has a child by her, and to raise money to kind of help her and support his kid who is now being raised with her and another man, he starts robbing banks with his motorcycle. Now this film has three different protagonists, and they're each kind of given their own act. It's a typical three-act film, and Ryan Gosling gets the first act, Bradley Cooper gets the second act, and both of their sons who meet each other in high school during their senior year get the third act. From hearing that loose plot description, I'm sure you can kind of figure out what the whole deal was with Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper, but I'm not going to tell you specifically. But an interesting, very old studio gangster type of plot line. However, the director, who also is the director of Blue Valentine, overcomplicates this movie. This movie is about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it really doesn't need to be. I mean, there could probably have been an hour cut off of this thing. There are just too many times where you have characters just kind of standing and looking at things, and you can just tell emoting is supposed to represent, like, I guess their kind of existential crisis. Place Beyond the Pines is very moody. It's kind of helped by a score from Mike Patton from Faith No More and Mr. Bungle. It kind of reminds me of Angelo Badalamenti, but I think it also brings out kind of the moody, pretentious qualities of this movie. If you had kind of a more of a leaner, meaner director, they could really do something kind of interesting with this. The problem with this director is that he's a little too obvious in some places, and he's a little too messy, and he's a little too moody, and he's a little too pretentious. This isn't a bad idea. I think the structure of this film, I think the basic idea of this film is kind of a cool idea. Or even if it was just the Ryan Gosling part would have been fine. There's a lot about it I liked. It's just like the runtime, I think by the time I get to the third act, I was really kind of sick of it. This felt more like a director's cut than a finished film. It really needed a lot of tightening. Ryan Gosling's basically playing a similar version of the character he played in Drive. He's not as confident as his character in Drive. I mean, you know, when he's yelling at the bank teller, you can hear his voice cracking. The character in Drive felt invincible. This guy feels a lot more vulnerable. It's not probably one of my favorite Ryan Gosling roles, but it's the kind of role I do like from Ryan Gosling. I think he's very good at it. I'm surprised how much I've been liking Bradley Cooper in more dramatic roles lately, because I really wasn't a big fan of him for a while. I thought he did actually a pretty good job. He's really essential to the film. He doesn't really show up till the end of the first act with Ryan Gosling, and then he's in the rest of the film, and he's a really important part of the film, and he's kind of the connective tissue throughout it, and he's the character who's really, you know, the one with all the guilt. There's kind of a lot of Catholic guilt running throughout this film, and Bradley Cooper's character, I think, really represents that. Somewhat with Ryan Gosling as well, but definitely with Bradley Cooper. I think Bradley Cooper is really almost like kind of the soul of 2/3 of the film. There's definite things to like, and I'm not going to act like this film is a total failure. When you're showing the passage of time through characters like, I mean, you know, look at like the Roaring Twenties. You can really say a lot about those characters. That's a big thing for this director, is showing the passage of time on a group of people, much like what he did with Blue Valentine. In Blue Valentine, where they went to the future room when they're in the present, it was the future of their marriage. Which is very on the nose, and he does some on the nose stuff, but unlike, you know, a Zemeckis or a Spielberg, he doesn't just go with it. It almost feels like he's a little embarrassed of it. He won't like fall into it. There's a certain part where you have Ryan Gosling driving his motorcycle down the road, and you have his son riding his bike down the road, and there are a lot of things like that that I think he might have played up a little bit more. Almost like the art house tendencies of this director hurt him more than helped him. I really do think that's probably one of the hardest things to do, is be an art house director and kind of mess with and put arty tendencies into kind of more of a mainstream structure, and I see more failures in that than I do with anything from like Lawless and this, or Killing Them Softly, are films that are like, they're interesting crime films that are definitely like twists on kind of a mainstream idea in this arty way, but it just doesn't seem to really work. They don't seem to really know enough about themselves. They don't seem to have the confidence. They're just meshing it together, but they don't have a clear idea of how they're meshing it together. Just because you have arty tendencies doesn't mean you need to be ambiguous in your direction. I think that's kind of the problem with films like this. It doesn't really want to be a big Hollywood crime film, but it does, and it also wants to be an art film at the same time. It needs to have more of a clear, concise message. Also, the fact that this film was way too long and had like 7 endings. I never really complain about length unless I can feel the length, and oh boy, I could feel the length with this one. I was fine with how long it was when I was with Bradley Cooper's character in the second act, but the third act, I just really waned on me. I didn't like the actor who played Bradley Cooper's son. I kind of thought he was a little fake. I do like Dane DeHaan, who played Ryan Gosling's son, Jason. I almost felt like he studied Ryan Gosling or something. And the other kid, he just didn't feel like, I did not understand how he was related at all to Bradley Cooper. You don't have to look like clones of the other actors. For a film that was supposed to be talking about as much as things change, they kind of stay the same through generations. They didn't really illustrate that in the casting of the third act. Derek Cianfrance, I always end up seeing his movies. I never quite like them that much. I don't like his arty tendencies. He obviously likes Cassavetes. I don't think it really works out in a great way. For a film that wants to act like it's kind of ambiguous sometimes, it really didn't need that. It needed to be very clear and concise. The few times he would do this, I wish he would just kind of run with it and really go with it. Even if it might have been lamer visual vocabulary, I feel like that would have worked a lot better for the movie. This film like kind of fell in on its own pretentious qualities to like ruin what it was ultimately trying to do. So if you have seen The Place Beyond the Pines and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. My voice did not sound so great in this one. I apologize.